Welcome to Pharaoh's Code, where the secrets of ancient history come to life. From the secrets of Egypt's forgotten dynasties to wonders carved in stone, we uncover the hidden secrets of our past. One discovery at a time. Subscribe and enter a world where time speaks. Has Cleopatra's body recently been found? Egyptian archaeologists have made an extraordinary discovery near Cairo. Drum roll, please. The oldest and most complete mummy ever found in the country has been unearthed. Yes, it had been kept a secret.
The 4,300-year-old mummy was discovered in a group of tombs near the Step Pyramid of Djoser, dating back to Egypt's Old Kingdom. It was covered in layers of gold. The team also uncovered several other tombs, including one belonging to an ancient Egyptian official, and another to a secret guard who had the authority to conduct special ceremonies. Among the most intriguing tombs was that of a scribe, which contained the largest statues ever found in the area. This massive burial site includes more than a dozen pyramids and tombs.
One of the world's most famous mummies is that of Hatshepsut. She ruled Egypt as a leader for nearly 20 years, building impressive structures and establishing new trade routes. But when archaeologist Howard Carter discovered her tomb in the Valley of the Kings, her sarcophagus was empty.
However, Carter did find two coffins in another tomb. One belonged to Hatshepsut's nurse and the other held an unidentified woman. In 2006, a team of specialists set out to investigate whether the mysterious woman was the queen herself. They found a tooth in a wooden box inscribed with Hatshepsut's name. When compared to a gap in the mummy's mouth, it was a perfect match.
Ramesses II was an incredibly impressive ruler, but it's his mummy that truly made history.
Not much is heard about his father, though. Well, let's stay focused. Ramesses is considered the most powerful pharaoh in all of Egypt, reigning for a full 6 decades. He also lived to be over 90 years old, an amazing feat for the time he lived in. It's believed that Ramesses II had more than 100 children. What a massive family.
When he died, his body was originally buried in the Valley of the Kings, but tomb raiders tried to steal all the treasures from his burial site. Officials at the time weren't pleased, so they moved his body to a secret location for protection. In the 19th century, Ramesses II's mummy was discovered among a group of important rulers and officials. It wasn't in the best condition, so archaeologists flew it to Paris for restoration. There was just one problem: he couldn't be transported to another country without official documentation. The only solution was to issue Ramesses II his own passport. His occupation was listed as king, and the document even included his photo.
As you might know, most mummies aren't exactly known for having soft, hydrated skin. But the mummy of an ancient woman, also known as Lady Di, proved otherwise. No, not that Lady Di. This wealthy woman from ancient times was discovered in a lavish tomb in 1971, and she looked stunning, for a mummy, that is.
Thanks to special conditions in her tomb, such as the humidity and lack of oxygen, her body was nearly perfectly preserved. Her skin was soft, her hair was neat, and her body remained flexible. The museum that now proudly displays her also showcases many of the luxurious items she was buried with, including dinner gowns and musical instruments. Further investigation revealed that Lady Di died of a heart attack at the age of 50. Even though she lived over 2,000 years ago, she continues to make history.
Then there's Otzi, the Iceman. His mummy was discovered in the Alps in 1991. At first, Austrian authorities believed he was a modern mountain climber because his body was so well preserved. But it turned out he was actually from the Copper Age.
He was found in a mountain pass over 10,000 feet above sea level. By studying his mummy, we've learned a lot about life in Copper Age Europe. For instance, he was a Central European who enjoyed eating meat. He also suffered from arthritis, clogged arteries and digestive issues. But he likely used acupuncture and herbal medicine to treat these conditions. It also appears he was very skilled with tools. He had sharpened them just days before his unexpected death. Who knows if he was preparing for trouble or just some routine work?
Now King Tut is probably the one who made all mummies famous. This young pharaoh died at the age of 19 over 3,000 years ago. But his mummy remains one of the most famous in the world. When his tomb was opened in 1922, people went wild because it was still intact. Unlike many other royal tombs, his included lavish coffins, some made of solid gold. King Tutankhamun's tomb not only gave us a glimpse into ancient Egyptian history, but also taught us much about the time he lived in. DNA analysis helped identify his parents and brought many forgotten facts back to life. It was reported that the pharaoh suffered from a rare bone disorder that may have made walking a bit difficult.
Now, Ginger is probably one of the coolest mummies you'll ever hear about. He's like a 5,000-year-old time traveler who still looks incredible, with his golden hair and perfectly preserved fingernails. Ginger was discovered in Egypt and is believed to be the oldest known naturally mummified body. Before people knew how to embalm bodies, they would place them in shallow graves in the hot, dry sand. Because the sand absorbed all the moisture, bacteria couldn't grow, and the body was preserved naturally. Scientists aren't sure whether Ginger's preservation was intentional or not, but since he was buried with some pottery, it's likely that whoever buried him knew something about early preservation techniques. If you'd like to meet Ginger in person, he's currently resting at the British Museum.
A Dutch art collector once bought a statue from Asia and ended up making a strange discovery. The statue had a hidden mummy inside. Unfortunately, the body was too fragile to be removed, so they had to leave it there. Even more fascinating, this mummy is over 1,000 years old and had been on display for 200 years before being placed inside the statue. When scientists performed a CT scan, they found that the mummy was filled with scraps of paper covered in writing. Experts believe he may have undergone something called self-mummification, an incredibly intense process that involved a special diet and teas that made the body less prone to decay. Very few people were able to complete this ritual, and those who did were highly respected.
No other Egyptian queen has puzzled scientists and historians quite like the stunning Nefertiti.
Based on her statues, she was known for her long neck, wide eyes, and high cheekbones. Her name means the beautiful woman has come. Talk about living up to your name, right?
Though she wasn't a pharaoh herself, Nefertiti still managed to make a lasting impact. Written records show that, as a wife and queen, she played a powerful and influential role.
Because of her strength, she was admired, but she also managed to make quite a few enemies during her lifetime. She was connected to King Tut, but not biologically. She was actually his stepmother. To this day, her mother's identity remains unknown, though that may soon change.
A local Egyptologist, busy excavating tombs in the Valley of the Kings, found two mummies believed to be Nefertiti and her daughter. According to experts, we may soon have a definitive answer about who these two mummies are.
And if one of them turns out to be Nefertiti, we're in for a real treat. DNA analysis and CT scans of the mummy could give us the most complete and accurate picture of the queen ever seen.
It's wild to think we've only scratched the surface of what lies beneath modern Egypt. Nefertiti ruled during a time of strength and prosperity, but sadly, she died during a period of social unrest, and her tomb was lost.
Now where's my mom?
When you hear the word mummy, you might get chills down your spine. That's because most of us associate mummies with creepy characters from horror movies.
But in reality, mummies have helped us understand a great deal about ancient civilizations, their rulers, and how people coped with the loss of loved ones. The most famous people in the world for their mummies are the ancient Egyptians.
They believed that some kind of afterlife was possible, but only if certain conditions were met. That's why they insisted on preserving the human body through mummification and placing the mummy in a fully furnished tomb.
It was like giving them their own fully equipped apartment. Why did they believe this? Well, mostly because they were deeply connected to their natural surroundings. They saw the cycles of nature around them, like the sun rising every day, followed by the moon, or how new life would always sprout from plants even after they wilted.
They also believed that the powerful spirit Osiris, who symbolized death and rebirth, played a role in the afterlife.
To prepare for that life after death, the ancient Egyptians followed specific rituals like embalming, which involved using substances such as honey, resins, and incense to preserve the body.
No mummy is more famous than that of King Tut. He was a young pharaoh who ruled Egypt over 3,000 years ago.
The problem with discovering ancient royal tombs is that most of them had already been looted. People knew that ancient rulers were buried with many valuable possessions, so those sites became targets for thieves.
When King Tut's tomb was opened in 1922, people were thrilled because it hadn't been robbed like so many others. That's how well it had been hidden.
That's exactly what happened. Inside, his mummy was wrapped in 3 coffins, one of which was made of solid gold. The items found in his tomb gave us a glimpse into life in ancient Egypt.
Studying his mummy also helped us learn more about the culture and practices at the time of his death. Through DNA analysis, we were even able to discover details about his family.
Scientists found that he had a disease called malaria and a foot condition that may have made walking difficult.
Ramses II was another Egyptian pharaoh who ruled for 68 years, which was a remarkably long time back then. He was known for his military campaigns and ambitious building projects.
Many structures from his era still exist today, including a massive statue of him. Ramses II stood about 6 feet tall and lived to be around 90 years old.
After examining his mummy, scientists concluded that he may have suffered from a medical condition that affected his spine.
Now, do you remember those tomb robbers we mentioned earlier?
The mummification process itself was extremely complex. In ancient Egypt, it could take an astonishing 70 days to complete.
A specially designated person would recite precise incantations while carefully handling the body and drying it out using a type of salt called natron. Linen and resin were also used to make the body look more lifelike before it was wrapped in cloth.
The tomb was just as important as the body to the ancient Egyptians. For instance, the walls of King Tutankhamun's tomb were adorned with intricate artwork depicting his journey to the afterlife, from his funeral procession to his passage through the underworld.
Ancient Egyptians believed that every person undertook this journey after death, so they filled their tombs with items and images to assist with the spiritual voyage. The walls of these tombs were often decorated with spells from a sacred text that contained poems believed to help the soul reach the afterlife.
To emphasize the importance of this journey, people would leave food offerings in these ancient tombs. In King Tut's tomb, archaeologists discovered 36 jars of vintage drinks and baskets of fruit, thought to have been left to support him during his journey to the next world.
Egyptians believed the trip to the afterlife took a long time, so they packed plenty of supplies, like food and water, to sustain their loved ones. Pharaohs often included luxurious clothes and fine jewelry in their tombs to ensure they travelled in style.
These items included various linen garments like tunics, scarves, gloves and headdresses, along with an abundance of gold jewelry adorned with gemstones, bracelets, buckles, pendants, necklaces, rings, and even sacred beetle amulets for protection. Some tombs also contained fans made of ivory and ostrich feathers to keep the royals cool in the afterlife.
Some ancient rulers even had boats placed in their eternal resting places. For example, Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid of Giza as his tomb, and a large boat was discovered inside.
However, King Tut was buried with many boat paddles but not an actual boat. Instead, he had 3 chariots and several walking sticks made from precious materials. This may suggest that he preferred to travel by land rather than by sea.
Among the most fascinating items found near ancient mummies were bottles of oils and perfumes. After all, if the pharaohs were meant to look elegant, they should smell good too, right?
Some of them even had ancient board games, most of which were made from luxurious materials like gold or ivory. One of these games was called Senet. It was extremely popular among ancient Egyptians and resembled modern chess in some ways.
The ancient Egyptians may have the most famous mummies, but they weren't the first to invent the process. In fact, it all started in South America with an ancient civilization known as the Chinchorro.
Based on what we know today, they were the first people to mummify their deceased loved ones, more than 2,000 years before the Egyptians began their own rituals.
Sure, we can learn a lot about ancient rulers by studying their mummies, but until recently, we had no idea what they actually looked like in life. However, not long ago, archaeologists studying ancient Egyptian artifacts discovered some incredibly unique mummy portraits.
These portraits were highly detailed images of individuals painted while they were still alive. Unlike the classic paintings we're familiar with today, which are done on canvas, these portraits were usually painted on wood.
They're known for their realism and beauty, and researchers have even used it to diagnose diseases by comparing it to the corresponding mummies. Some of these portraits also include images of jewelry that was later found on the mummies themselves.
The recent discovery of such portraits in Central Egypt is significant because it's the first time in over a century that similar artwork has been uncovered.
Mummification has also occurred naturally in various parts of the world. It can happen without human intervention due to environmental conditions, such as extreme cold or heat, areas with low oxygen, or accidental exposure to chemical substances that preserve the body. These conditions prevent bacteria from growing, allowing the body to remain relatively intact. One famous example is the Iceman. Today, we know he was a man who lived around 5,000 years ago in Europe. But when he was first discovered in the Alps in 1991, Austrian authorities initially thought he was a modern-day mountaineer because his body was so well preserved. However, once the Iceman was removed from the glacier, it was determined that he actually came from the Copper Age.
A chilling discovery was made in Egypt a few years ago. Want to hear about it? 16 human hands, carefully buried in 4 strange pits. At first, they didn't look like human hands because of their unusually large size, but they were. Strangely, they were all right hands. No left hands were found. It turned out that this pointed to an ancient dark ritual. Egyptian art and tales describe a ceremony where warriors would offer their enemies' right hands as proof of victory in exchange for gold. The Egyptians believed in the afterlife, so severing someone's hand was seen as cutting off their power forever. Securing this kind of defeat was seen as a powerful gesture for the victor. This particular battle was between the Egyptians and the Hyksos, who once lived in what was formerly known as Canaan.
Now this might sound strange, but in 2008, archaeologists discovered a lost pyramid. It had disappeared due to erosion over the past 4,000 years. Today, only its base remains visible. It was once a highly significant location in ancient times. It's said that in the area around the pyramid, ancient Egyptians held a special type of ceremony in which high priests carried mummified remains of sacred bulls. Fun fact, the ancient Egyptians believed that Apis bulls were the earthly embodiment of the god of the city of Memphis and were linked to fertility rites. But it couldn't be just any bull. It had to be completely black, with a single white mark between its horns, along with other very specific features. These bulls were selected by local priests and honored until their death. Then, they were mummified and buried in underground galleries. In the meantime, that lost pyramid vanished from memory sometime around the 19th century. A German archaeologist was the first to find it in the village of Saqqara. He called it the Headless Pyramid when he first discovered it. But over the years, desert sand swept in and buried the entire structure. There were a few digs between the 19th and 20th centuries, but they weren't very systematic. That's why scientists were so thrilled when they unearthed the full base of the pyramid after removing a 25-foot-high mound of sand that had completely covered it.
Aside from bulls and buffalo, the ancient Egyptians also loved baboons. See a pattern here?
In the early 20th century, archaeologists discovered a site filled with mummified baboons in a place called, you guessed it, the Valley of the Monkeys.
Animals weren't mummified unless they were considered important. Some animals were more significant than others because they were associated with specific gods.
Jackals were linked to Anubis, the ancient god of the afterlife, and cats were associated with the goddess Bastet.
Baboons were especially revered because they were believed to be connected to Thoth, the god of wisdom and advisor to Ra, one of Egypt's greatest deities.
However, archaeologists who studied these animals weren't thrilled. They believed the baboons were kept indoors and deprived of sunlight for most of their lives. They suffered from severe vitamin D deficiency and were poorly fed.
Perhaps Thoth wasn't too pleased with how his baboons were treated. Just a guess.
And since there's never a dull day for archaeologists in Egypt, they also discovered human mummies with gold tongues. Because the ancient Egyptians were deeply concerned with the afterlife, They believed these golden tongues could help the deceased speak once they crossed over. I mean, it's a long shot, but hey, why not? Some of these mummies were placed in wooden coffins, along with goods like necklaces, pottery, and golden artifacts shaped like lotus flowers and scarab beetles. And iPhones. Just kidding.
A new temple was also recently discovered in Egypt. Scholars believe it was dedicated to honoring Zeus Cassios, a fusion of Zeus, the great Greek sky god, and Mount Cassios. While digging around Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, archaeologists uncovered two pink granite columns sticking out of the ground. Bingo! They believe these columns were once part of the temple's entrance and collapsed during an earthquake many years ago.
Speaking of gods, not all deities were solemn and serious. Scientists recently found a golden ring in a town south of Cairo. No, Frodo, it's not magical. It was just a regular gold ring, but it bore the image of Bes, the god of fun and joy. He's often depicted in sacred texts as a short, chubby, and cheerful dwarf.
Today, many of our tattoos are purely aesthetic, with little or no meaning. In ancient Egypt, however, women wore tattoos as symbols of protection during childbirth, or so scientists believe. In the Nile region, researchers discovered several mummies with well-preserved tattoos, which is rare since skin tends to deteriorate easily. Two of these women had tattoos on their lower backs. The designs were simple, mostly symbols, including the same chubby dwarf Bes we just talked about. He also had a side job as a protector of women during labor.
Now, would you believe me if I told you the ancient Egyptians invented robots? No? Well, that's because it's not entirely true. Sure, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, and somehow they also slipped in a quirky invention. It was a mechanical deity that some scholars nicknamed Hathor-Bot. This wooden statue sat in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for years before anyone noticed its secret. With the help of X-ray technology, experts discovered a mechanical system inside it. A pulley-like axle ran from the statue's shoulder down to its left leg. When the mechanism turned, the statue would raise and lower its arm. "Hey, pick me, I raised my hand!" The Taj Mahal. First up, we have the Taj Mahal in India, one of the most romantic places in the world. Shah Jahan commissioned it in 1631 as a gift for his third wife, whom he loved dearly. They were married for 19 years and had 14 children. Sadly, she died while giving birth to their last child. Grief-stricken, Shah Jahan decided to build a massive mausoleum in her honor. Construction took a full 20 years to complete.
The building features a striking design. Quite unusual, actually, with 4 massive pillars, each 130 feet tall, standing at the corners of a giant platform. In the 17th century, architects faced serious problems with buildings collapsing under their own weight. To prevent this, the chief architect of the Taj Mahal made sure to position the minarets as far away from the tomb as possible. He even tilted them slightly outward so that if they ever fell, they wouldn't destroy the rest of the Taj Mahal. Talk about planning ahead.
The Taj Mahal hides some crazy secrets. There are locked rooms everywhere that no one is allowed to enter. And if you look at photos of the building from the riverside, you can spot 2 crypts. But guess what? They're sealed too. No one knows what's inside or why they've remained locked since the time of Shah Jahan. Apparently there's a good reason people aren't allowed inside those rooms. Some researchers believe they were built with marble, which can transform into a different material called calcium carbonate when exposed to carbon dioxide. When that happens, the marble starts to flake and decay rapidly.
To make matters worse, there's no airflow in these rooms. So if too much CO2 builds up in the basement, the 4 minaret rooms could collapse. But wait, there's more. Some people believe Shah Jahan's wife's body might still be in one of those sealed rooms in perfect condition. Why not? Who knows what secrets these mysterious rooms are keeping?
The Padmanabha Swami Temple, located in the beautiful Indian state of Kerala, is famous for more than just its stunning appearance. Beneath it lie 6 vaults, creatively labeled A through F. Massive iron doors guard each chamber, adding to the mystery of what lies beyond them.
A few years ago, authorities decided to open the vaults to the world. But it wasn't an easy task. You can't just open the doors and walk in. It took a lot of effort, but in 2011, they finally managed to open 5 of the 6 vaults. And guess what they found? Tons of treasure, bags of gold, priceless gemstones, and diamond jewelry. The total value of the findings was estimated at $1 trillion. It's like the temple was the real-life inspiration for Aladdin's Cave of Wonders.
But wait, I said 5 of the 6. What about the last one? Vault B remained sealed. Not for lack of trying, though, they simply couldn't get it open. There's also a belief that it's protected by a deadly curse. According to legend, only a saint or sage can break the curse by chanting a specific spell. But no one has succeeded yet, maybe because we don't have any saints or sages around these days.
There's another rumor that temple looters tried to open Vault B in the 1930s for a bit of old-fashioned plundering, but they didn't get far. Supposedly, terrifying snakes appeared out of nowhere and drove the intruders away. Of course, that's just a local legend and there's no proof. Still, the temple's chief auditor claimed Vault B has actually been opened at least 7 times since 1990 and no one got hurt. Who knows, maybe we should send Indiana Jones to check it out. The tomb of the first emperor. Deep inside a hill, quiet and surrounded by deadly traps, lies a 2,000-year-old tomb belonging to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Born in the state of Qin, he became king as a child. But as he grew older and gained full power, he united the warring states. Ancient China had been divided into... He conquered them. After that, he established the Qin dynasty. When he died in 210 BCE, he was buried deep underground in a massive tomb. And when I say massive, I mean massive.
In 1974, some farmers in Xi'an, China discovered something strange while digging a well, a large clay soldier. This discovery led to extensive archaeological excavations that lasted over 40 years and revealed an entire army of thousands of terracotta warriors. What's unique about these soldiers is that each one has distinct features, from hairstyles to facial expressions. It's believed there may be up to 8,000 of these soldiers, but only about 2,000 have been unearthed so far. Interestingly, the central tomb, believed to be the final resting place of the emperor, remains untouched.
Ancient records refer to a vast underground city built by the emperor, complete with scenic towers, palaces, and more. Sima Qian, a historian from the Han dynasty, wrote that the tomb was adorned with treasures and could hold hundreds of officials. But a lack of the right technology has delayed proper exploration. Qin Shi Huang was buried surrounded by liquid mercury, with 2 flowing rivers symbolizing China's main rivers, the Yellow River and the Yangtze. The ancient Chinese believed mercury could grant immortality. Ironically, it may have caused his death, as he regularly consumed mercury pills to extend his life. Dangerously high levels of mercury contamination in the soil near the tomb are a major reason why scientists are hesitant to explore it. It could be extremely hazardous to both people and the environment.
Now, if I had to choose a door to open, I'd probably pick one that doesn't lead to a tomb filled with toxic mercury. Call me crazy, but I'd like to avoid any potential health risks. Unlike many other ancient Egyptian tombs, King Tutankhamun's tomb remained hidden and untouched by grave robbers for 3,000 years. One reason was that the tomb was smaller than average and tucked away in a place called the Valley of the Kings. By the time they found Tutankhamun's site, the area had already been widely explored. The entrance had been completely covered by debris from the construction of a nearby tomb, which likely helped keep it hidden. There were also no inscriptions or markings on the exterior of the tomb. Time played a role too, preserving it in astonishing condition until the 1920s, when a man named Howard Carter finally managed to enter. But was Carter a great hero? Some recent findings suggest he may have been a little craftier than we thought. People used to believe Carter wasn't just a glorified treasure hunter, he was a real archaeologist. He developed an interest in ancient artifacts as a child, and quickly began sketching sculptures and carvings from old tombs. After discovering King Tut's remains, Carter spent a decade cataloging and processing all sorts of items like golden thrones, chariots, and statues from the tomb, shipping them along the Nile to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Well, at least that was the official story.
Recent discoveries claim not everything reached Egyptian authorities. A secret letter reveals Carter's own 10 for them, one for me policy. The letter, dated 1922, was sent to Sir Alan Gardner, a linguist and Carter's friend. In it, Carter described finding the tomb and asked for advice. In another letter from 1934, Gardner appears to thank Carter for sending him an amulet as a gift. Carter insisted it wasn't from King Tut's tomb, but clearly it was. Even the British director of the Egyptian Museum knew about Carter's shady dealings, but couldn't prove anything. Gardner compared the amulet he received to another one from the tomb, and they were identical. Gardner was so disappointed to be caught up in such a tricky situation that he vented his frustration to Carter in another letter. Still, Gardner chose to be a loyal friend. He didn't rat Carter out. Instead, he advised him to return the stolen artifacts to Cairo, just like how I'm advising you to like this video and subscribe to Brightside for more amazing content about history's most fascinating topics.
But that wasn't the only suspicious detail about Carter's behavior after the discovery. In 1947, a man named Alfred Lucas, who had worked with a controversial archaeologist, shared some info in a mysterious Cairo magazine. He claimed Carter secretly opened the burial chamber himself. He then resealed it as if nothing had happened before the official reveal, so why would he do that? Well, the theory suggests that Carter and his team may have entered the tomb early to grab a few valuable items before anyone else knew. It's clear that these individuals didn't dare sell the artifacts while they were alive, but they made sure they were auctioned off after their deaths. Still, Carter never admitted to anything, nor did he officially deny it. However, the Egyptian government couldn't risk any more mysterious disappearances, so they barred him from entering the tomb for a while.
Some have linked this apparent theft to the curse of King Tut. If you've never heard of it, it became a terrifying story after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. The curse claimed that anyone who disturbed the boy Pharaoh's resting place would face a terrible fate. It wasn't quite as dramatic as a mummy going on a rampage, but there were reports of people involved in opening the tomb meeting mysterious and untimely ends. The most notable early death linked to the alleged curse was that of George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. He was the British aristocrat who helped fund the tomb's discovery. He died just 1 year after the tomb was opened. People love to call this mysterious, but the truth is that Herbert was already in very poor health when he arrived in Cairo, and he ended up dying from a fairly ordinary illness.
Let's talk numbers. There were many people involved in the opening of the tomb: security guards, archaeologists, support staff. And yes, some of them did die shortly after the tomb was opened to visitors. While we may wish the curse were real for the sake of a dramatic story, statistically speaking, if you have a large group of people tied to the discovery, some are bound to die of natural causes around the same time just by chance. In fact, the average lifespan of those supposedly affected by the ancient curse was over 20 years after the curse supposedly began. Even Herbert's daughter lived into the 1980s, more than half a century later. Howard Carter himself lived until 1935, a full 16 years after the major discovery.
Some have even suggested that the entire curse was nothing more than a clever public relations strategy. You see, when the tomb was discovered, Carter wanted to keep nosy journalists away. So, he may have invented the idea of a curse on anyone who entered the young king's tomb.
But what exactly was stolen from King Tut's tomb? Well, mostly jewelry, and Howard Carter may have taken it himself. According to a French specialist who did extensive research by examining old photos taken inside the tomb in the 1920s, he compared those images to items found in museums and auction houses. He soon started piecing together the whereabouts of some of Tutankhamun's missing jewelry. First, there's the necklace that once lay on Tut's chest. It had broken into pieces, and some parts ended up, via Carter, at the Nelson Atkins Museum in Missouri. Meanwhile, other pieces were used in a different necklace owned by unknown individuals who tried to sell it in 2015, but failed. Even the Nelson Atkins Museum confirmed this on their website. Then there's a piece from Tut's headdress. Some of the beads from it appear to have been taken by Carter as well. They were later used in another necklace that is now on display at the St. Louis Art Museum. Another luxurious collar, made from glazed ceramic charms, once spent time at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Thankfully, it was returned to Egypt just over a decade ago. That piece too seems to have been taken by Carter, as you've probably come to expect by now. Regardless of the missing artifacts, King Tutankhamun still offers plenty of stunning treasures that have helped us learn more about this fascinating ancient culture. One of the most iconic pieces is his burial mask, a massive 21-inch work of art made from gold. inlaid with semi-precious stones and colored glass paste. It weighs 22 pounds and depicts the boy pharaoh with a long beard and the traditional headdress featuring a cobra. Finally, at the end of the video, we want to thank you for listening and encourage you to follow the Pharaoh's Code channel and watch future videos.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more amazing content about history's most fascinating topics.